Hello, I'm Iowa City Mayor Bruce Teague. For the past 4 months, our healthcare workers, our businesses, and our residents have stepped up to face the challenges of COVID-19. It hasn't been easy, but having each individual business and person do their part can make a big difference. Despite those efforts, the pandemic is still in full force. Just today, Iowa recorded over 500 new cases of COVID-19. The state's highest number of positive cases came only days ago when 879 cases were recorded on Friday, July 17th. With more than 30,000 college students set to return to Iowa City in August, the time for action is now. The scientific data and evidence is clear. Face coverings and masks are a safe, effective way to get case numbers down. Some models predict that if 95% of people wear face coverings nationwide, we will save 40,000 lives between now and November. That's why half the states in the U.S. have mandated masks, with even the president saying it's patriotic to wear a mask. This simple act will help save lives, jobs, businesses, schools, and help our community regain some sense of normalcy as we stop transmission of this novel disease. This is why today I signed the following proclamation. Whereas, as mayor of the city of Iowa City, I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Iowa. And whereas Article 3, Section 38A of the Iowa Constitution grants to municipalities the power to determine their local affairs and government, not inconsistent with the laws of the General Assembly, and whereas Chapter 364 of the Iowa Code reaffirms the constitutional grant of home rule authority to municipalities to exercise any power and perform any function it deems appropriate to protect and preserve the rights, privileges, and property of the city or its residents, and improve the peace, safety, health, welfare, and convenience of its residents. And whereas a city may exercise its general powers, subject only to limitations expressly imposed by a state or city law, and the exercise of a city power is not inconsistent with the state law unless it is irreconcilable with the state law. Iowa Code Section 364.2, subsections 2 and 3. And whereas a city may set standards more stringent than those imposed by state law, unless a state law provides otherwise. Iowa Code Section 364.3 and City of Iowa City of Des Moines versus Gruen and Bryan versus City of Des Moines decision of the Iowa Supreme Court. Whereas Section 372.14 of the Iowa Code authorizes the mayor to govern the city by proclamation upon making a determination that time of emergency or public danger exists. And whereas pursuant to the powers vested in me as mayor under Section 372.14 of the Iowa Code and Section 8-1-2 of the City Code of Iowa City, I issued a proclamation of civil emergency on March 18, 2020, due to the dangers presented by the novel coronavirus 2019, and declared my intention to take such extraordinary measures as are in my judgment necessary to maintain the health, welfare, and safety within the community. And whereas on March 17, 2020, the governor of Iowa issued a proclamation of public health disaster emergency after multiple cases of coronavirus, COVID-19, had been confirmed in Iowa. And the Iowa Department of Public Health determined that community spread was occurring within the state. And whereas positive cases of the virus continue at an alarming rate in Johnson Johnson County and Iowa City, its largest municipality. And whereas August may bring the return to the city of thousands of students to attend the University of Iowa, which will further increase the risk of the spread of the virus within our community. And whereas the Centers for Disease Control has determined that face coverings are a critical tool in the fight against COVID-19 that could reduce the spread of the virus, particularly when used universally within communities. And whereas on July 17, 2020, the director of the Johnson County Department of Public Health, in asking all area municipalities to adopt a face covering resolution, stated, "We ask that everyone recognize and understand that wearing a face covering in public is more than a simple gesture. It protects others." And further stated, "Much is unknown, but one thing is evident. The virus is here to stay, and we must take action. While our path is uncertain and much is unknown, we do have the tools to reduce risk to ourselves and each other. We just have to use them. This action requires the collective actions of everyone." And whereas the governor's current proclamation requires that businesses and gatherings ensure social distancing of employees, customers, and attendees, increase hygiene practices, and other public health measures to reduce the risk of the transmission of COVID-19, consistent with the guidance of the Iowa Department of Public Health. And whereas the Iowa Department of Public Health reopening guidance advises that members of the public consider the use of cloth face coverings when distancing is not possible, because wearing face coverings in public places where social distancing measures are difficult can help slow the spread of COVID-19, and refers the public to the local public health agency, the appropriate regulating agency, or professional association with questions about how to implement its guidance. And whereas a requirement that persons in Iowa City wear face coverings is essential to reducing the risk of transmission of COVID-19 and necessary to protect the health, welfare, and safety of residents and visitors and accelerate local recovery efforts. And whereas a requirement that persons wear face coverings is consistent with the governor's proclamation and the guidance of the Iowa Department of Public Health and the Johnson County Department of Public Health. Pursuant to Article 3, Section 38A of the Iowa Constitution, the powers vested in me as mayor under Section 372.14 of the Iowa Code, Section 8-1-2 of the City Code of Iowa City, and the Mayor's Proclamation of Civil Emergency signed March 18, 2020, I deem it advisable that when present within the City of Iowa City, all persons wear face coverings as ordered below. I hereby order, effective immediately, every person in the City of Iowa City must wear a face covering that covers their nose and mouth when in a public place as follows. In public, as opposed to being in one's place of residence, when one cannot stay 6 feet away from others. Inside of any indoor public setting, for example, but not limited to grocery stores, pharmacies, hardware stores, retail stores, and other public settings that are not one's place of residence, and when with persons who do not live in the same household. Outside if keeping 6 feet away from others is not possible. Using public transportation or private car service, including taxis, rideshare, or carpooling. No business that is open to the public may provide service to a customer or allow a customer to enter its premises unless the customer is wearing a face covering, as required by this order. And businesses that are open to the public must post signs at entrances instructing customers of their legal obligation to wear a face covering while inside. Those who are exempt from wearing a face covering: persons younger than 2 years old due to the risk of suffocation, anyone who has trouble breathing on oxygen therapy or ventilator, anyone who is unconscious, incapacitated, or otherwise unable to remove the face covering without assistance, anyone who has been told by a medical, legal, or behavioral health professional not to wear face coverings, anyone actively engaged in a public safety role, including but not limited to law enforcement, firefighters, or emergency medical personnel. Places and times where persons are exempt from wearing a face covering: while traveling in a personal vehicle, alone or with household members; while a person is alone or in the presence of only household members; while exercising at moderate or high intensity, such as jogging or hiking; while seated at a food establishment in the process of eating or drinking; while obtaining a service that would require temporary removal of the person's face covering; when federal or state law prohibits wearing a face covering or requires the removal of the face covering. Pursuant to City Code Section 8-1-2, a violation of this order or any directive given pursuant hereby, any police officer shall be unlawful and punishable as a simple misdemeanor. Citation shall be a last resort to obtain compliance. This order shall expire on September 15th, 2020, unless otherwise rescinded or extended. Issued this 21st day of July 2020, signed by me, Mayor Bruce Teague. Simply put, by wearing a face mask, you are showing your fellow residents that you care about them. If we comply with this order, Iowa City will see the difference. We're all in this together, and that means that we all can play our part. Thank you, Iowa City.